little girl tugged at his sleeve, insisting he eat before he became too busy to remember. She held out a small sandwich wrapped in wax paper, and he hesitated because he knew he had no time for distractions, but something about her small, determined eyes made him pause, and in that pause he heard the faintest whisper behind the elevator doors that made his stomach turn, as if someone was watching them. He took the sandwich and lifted it slowly to his mouth, but the moment he bit into it he realized the filling was not what he had expected. It was sweet and sour at the same time, and he wondered if she had made it herself, or if someone else had left it for her. And before he could think further, the elevator jolted as if it had struck something, invisible in the shaft, and the lights flickered once, then went dark. She laughed softly in the darkness, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Her tiny fingers gripped his hand tightly, and he noticed her eyes glinting with an intelligence far beyond her years. He asked her how she knew he would be coming here today, and she whispered back that some things were written long before they were meant to be read. But he could not understand what she meant, and a sudden sound of footsteps above them made him spin around. When the lights came back on, the lobby looked empty except for the girl and the bag she carried, but the sound of the footsteps continued as if echoing through invisible hallways. He crouched down to look at her face, and she tilted her head and smiled in a way that seemed like a warning and a thrill at the same time, and he felt a pulse of fear that he could not place. They walked together toward the office corridors that twisted like a maze, and the walls seemed narrower than they should have been, as if the building itself were breathing and shifting. She held the bag tightly against her chest, and every now and then she whispered numbers and letters that he could not understand, but felt important, and he realized, with a sinking feeling, that she was leading him somewhere he did not want to go yet, could not resist following. A sudden alarm blared somewhere far away, and the CEO glanced at the screens he had ignored for weeks, and saw shapes moving through the corridors, not people but shadows that mirrored the girl's movements and vanished the moment he tried to focus on them. He turned back to her, and she was smiling innocently as if nothing unusual had happened, but he felt the hairs on his neck rise. He reached the office floor, and the door stood slightly ajar. He pushed it slowly and found a chair turned upside down on the desk, and papers scattered across the floor in a pattern that looked like a map. He bent down to examine them, and the girl pointed to a corner where a faint glow pulsed, and when he looked, he saw a small key taped underneath the desk. The metal looked old and warm to the touch, and the glow seemed to whisper his name. He picked up the key, and she clapped softly as if congratulating him. But when he asked her what had opened, she only shook her head and whispered, "Follow me." The corridors twisted again, and the lights flickered, making shadows dance along the walls, and he could swear he heard faint laughter echoing from the ceiling and a low hum vibrating through the floorboards. At the end of the hall, a door appeared that he had never noticed before. It was narrow and unmarked, and she pressed her small hand against it, and it creaked open, revealing a staircase, spiraling downward into darkness. He hesitated because his instincts screamed at him to stop, but she grinned and whispered, "You have to see it." And the stairwell seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the building itself were alive. As he descended the steps, the temperature dropped sharply, and he noticed markings on the walls in a language he did not recognize, some of them glowing faintly, and he tried to remember if he had seen anything like it before in old books or files. But the memory eluded him, and a faint rustling came from the shadows below, making him step back as she giggled and said, "Don't be afraid, it's just the beginning." Halfway down the stairs, a sudden noise like glass shattering echoed through the shaft, and the girl froze, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. At the same time, he called out her name, but she did not answer, instead pointing to a faint light at the bottom of the spiral, and the walls seemed to close in slightly, forcing him to move faster. Yet he felt every step heavier than the last, and his pulse quickened as if warning him something waited. When they reached the landing, a small room appeared, barely large enough for them both inside. The walls were covered with mirrors that reflected not their faces but scenes he did not recognize, people he had never met, and events he could not remember participating in. He turned to ask her how this was possible, but she had vanished from his side, leaving only the key glowing faintly on the floor and a whisper that said, "Come closer." He picked up the glowing key and felt a strange warmth pulse through his fingers as if it had a heartbeat of its own. He glanced around the room, and the mirrors reflected not him, but a version of himself. He did not recognize, older, tired, and haunted by memories he could not recall, and a cold whisper echoed through the chamber saying, "You are not ready yet." The little girl appeared suddenly behind him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, and she smiled, a smile that was both innocent and terrifying. She held out a hand and whispered, "Follow me." And he felt compelled to obey, though every instinct screamed to run, and the floor beneath them seemed to hum with a low vibration, like something alive waiting for them to make a mistake. They descended a narrow corridor lined with old photographs that shifted and changed as they walked, each one showing moments of his life. He could not remember, yet felt intimately familiar. He reached out to touch one, and his fingers passed through it like smoke, and a faint giggle echoed behind him, reminding him she was always just one step ahead, and something was watching them from the shadows. At the end of the corridor, a door appeared carved from dark wood. With strange symbols etched into the surface, she handed him the key and whispered, "This is where it begins." And he hesitated because the air around it felt thick and heavy, as if the door itself were breathing. He turned the key slowly and the lock clicked like a heartbeat, and a chill ran down his spine. The door swung open to reveal a room filled with mirrors stacked from floor to ceiling, each reflecting a different scene, each showing him making choices he did not remember making, and with each reflection the girl's face appeared briefly behind him, smiling and vanishing, leaving only the sound of her whispers that promised he would understand soon if he could only follow. He stepped inside and the floor shifted beneath his feet, making him stumble, and the reflections around him warped, twisting his perception of time and space. He felt himself pulled toward one mirror in particular. It shimmered like water, and inside he saw a version of the girl, older and crying, and her lips moved, forming words he could not hear. And when he blinked, she was gone, leaving only the echo of a soft sob. The walls seemed to close in as he advanced, and suddenly the lights went out, leaving him in darkness. Except for the faint glow of the key in his hand, he heard tiny footsteps circling him and whispers that promised secrets he was not ready to hear. Yet his heart pounded like a drum in a distant forest, and a single voice finally broke the silence and whispered, "Your choice will change everything." He turned to find the little girl standing on the edge of a mirror platform suspended in midair. She reached out and beckoned him forward, but the floor beneath him cracked slightly, and he felt as if he were falling into an abyss. She smiled and whispered, "Don't be afraid." And at that moment the reflection of a man he did not recognize appeared behind him in the mirror and raised a hand as if warning him to stop. He stepped closer, and the air became thick and electric, and he felt memories trying to surface, images of rooms and faces he did not recognize. And the girl clapped her hands softly and said, "Not everything is yours yet." And a chill ran down his spine, because the mirror behind her rippled, and a shadow of himself stepped out from the glass and mirrored his every movement perfectly. The shadow spoke without moving its lips and said, "You cannot hide what you have forgotten." He stumbled backward, and the girl laughed softly and whispered, "Follow the light," and a faint glow appeared at the far end of the room. He ran toward it, but the reflection shifted again, showing him choices he had made and people he had betrayed or forgotten. And the light seemed to pulse with urgency, as if calling him into a truth he was not prepared to face at the edge of the room. The light became blinding, and he shielded his eyes, but when he looked again, the girl was gone, leaving only the key and a small envelope on the floor. He picked it up and opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing of the two of them in a place he did not recognize, and beneath it were the words, "You have always known the truth if you dare to see it." And he felt his knees weaken. Suddenly the mirrors began to shatter one by one with a sound like screaming glass, and the shadows of people long forgotten reached out from the broken shards. He grabbed the girl's drawing tightly and ran toward the glow at the far end, and the air became thick with whispers promising answers, but also danger, and the glow seemed to stretch and twist, leading him into a place that was not entirely real. At the final step, a figure appeared in the light. It was both the girl and someone else, older, familiar yet unknown. She extended a hand and whispered, "Everything begins now," and he realized in that instant that whatever he had believed about her and himself had been a lie. and the truth he was about to uncover would change everything he thought he knew about.